Imagine this. The studio lights are blazing, the audience is roaring, and Johnny Carson, the undisputed king of late night, is flashing that legendary smile. But behind that charming grin, sometimes pure irritation. Because not every guest who sat across from Carson made him laugh. Some made his skin crawl. Others nearly pushed him over the edge. From icy silences to unspoken grudges, a few interviews got so uncomfortable, you could almost feel the tension through the screen. You might think you know which celebrities got on his bad side, but trust me, the one who tops this list will surprise you. Let's pull back the curtain on the guests Johnny Carson secretly wished had never set foot on a stage. Don Rickles. The name alone makes you smile, right? Well, get ready, because what's about to happen is pure late-night television gold. The #1 spot on this list? Oh yeah, it goes straight to Don Rickles. But here's the kicker. This wasn't your average feud. Nope, it wasn't fueled by hatred or bitterness. It was something far juicier. Part chaos, part comedy, and completely unforgettable. Picture this. Johnny Carson walks back onto the Tonight Show set after a rare night off. He slides into his chair, ready to start the show, when suddenly, something feels off. He glances down at his desk and freezes. His beloved cigarette box, his favorite one, the one that had followed him all the way from New York, was broken in half. The wood was split, the finish was ruined. His face tightened. "What the hell happened to this?" Carson asked, his voice carrying that mix of anger and disbelief only Johnny could deliver. Before anyone could respond, a murmur rippled through the studio. Then, from the audience and the crew alike, one name started echoing: Rickles! Bandleader Doc Severinsen didn't sugarcoat it. He confirmed the rumor. Don Rickles had been the culprit just the night before during his guest hosting stint with Bob Newhart. Rickles, in his usual high-energy chaos, had been pounding on Johnny's desk as part of a bit, and boom, accidentally shattered Johnny's treasured box. Carson's expression darkened. "That's an heirloom," he muttered, clutching the broken piece like it was gold. And then someone in the studio dropped the perfect piece of information. Rickles was right across the hall, filming his sitcom CPO Sharky at that very moment. You could almost see the spark ignite in Carson's eyes. "Can I get over there?" Carson asked the crew, half smiling now, his irritation turning into something much more dangerous, mischievous payback. When they said yes, he didn't hesitate for a second. Carson snatched up the broken box, grabbed a microphone, and left his own studio audience hanging. The camera trailed him as he stormed down the NBC hallways like a man on a mission. The tension built with every step until he reached the double doors glowing with red lights, the universal sign that filming was in progress. Carson turned to the crew beside him, a smirk forming on his face. "Are they taping?" he asked. And what happened next? Well, late-night TV would never be the same again. Without waiting for a single response, he stormed forward like a man possessed. Cameras rolling, he didn't care. Johnny Carson burst through those studio doors, his voice echoing across the set. "Stop the taping! Someone broke my cigarette box!" Rickles froze, then absolutely lost it. He doubled over in laughter, face red, trying to hold it together while nervous sweat glistened under the studio lights. Carson stood there, holding up the broken box like it was evidence in a courtroom. "They told me you broke it on the show last night," Carson said sharply. Rickles, still gasping through laughter, could barely form a sentence. "Well, I," was all he managed before Carson cut in with that trademark bite. "You big dummy." The audience roared, unsure if they were watching a meltdown or a masterclass in comedy timing. And that was the beauty of it. You could never tell with these two. Carson's fury looked real. Rickles' fear looked genuine, and somewhere in the chaos, magic happened. Trying to defuse the moment, Rickles cracked a joke saying he'd gift the broken box to Tony Randall for his wedding. But Carson wasn't smiling. He leaned in, eyes narrowing. "I want to know what you're going to do about this." The tension built as Rickles fumbled for words. When the apology didn't come fast enough, Carson went in for the kill, taking a jab at Rickles' failing sitcom and even tossing a risky line toward one of his black co-stars. Better hang on to your other job, Carson said. If this show is like the last one, you'll be out by January. That one landed hard. Rickles finally dropped the act, mumbling an apology and promising to make it right. Carson nodded slowly, his tone cold but controlled. Well, I hope so, he said, half smirking, because I want something back. But here's the kicker. That wasn't the end of their cigarette box saga. 2 years later, Rickles found himself guest hosting The Tonight Show again, this time with Carol O'Connor. And just like fate wanted a sequel, he started pounding on Carson's desk during a sketch. Then, silence. Rickles froze mid-swing, eyes widening in horror. The box. It was right there again, beautifully repaired or maybe replaced. He picked it up like it was a sacred relic, whispering mock prayers over it as the audience howled. When Carson dies, Rickles said to O'Connor with dramatic sincerity, I'm gonna put him in this. And that line summed them up perfectly. Rickles and Carson weren't enemies. They were two comedy titans locked in a hilarious, ongoing duel. Rickles pushed the limits, Carson pretended to lose his cool, and together, they created one of the greatest running bits in late-night TV history. Picture this. The lights of Las Vegas are blazing, the crowd is roaring, and stepping into that spotlight is none other than the Queen of Vegas herself, Lola Falana. Back in her prime, she wasn't just famous, she was the moment. Singing, dancing, acting, you name it, she owned it. So when she strutted onto the Tonight Show couch, it should have been an easy night, a celebration of her sold-out Vegas residency. But that's not how it went down. Mid-interview, Lola flipped the script. Instead of sticking to lighthearted chatter, she started speaking her truth, raw, unfiltered, about racism and discrimination in the entertainment industry. The audience went silent. Johnny Carson, who usually kept things playful and apolitical, suddenly looked like he'd been hit with a curveball he never saw coming. And just when things couldn't get more awkward, they did. Lola's big Vegas show? It was at the Aladdin Hotel, the same venue tied to Carson's long-standing feud with Wayne Newton. Without meaning to, Lola walked straight into the middle of their Cold War. After that night, something strange happened. The Tonight Show never called her back. Vegas still adored her, but Carson's stage, that door stayed shut for good. Sometimes, even in showbiz, telling the truth can cost you your spotlight. Imagine spending 30 years laughing beside someone you secretly can't stand. Sounds unbelievable, right? That's exactly what might have been going on between Johnny Carson and his famous sidekick, Ed McMahon. You probably thought, wait, Ed McMahon? The guy who laughed at all Johnny's jokes, introduced him every night, and made the Tonight Show magic happen? Yep, that's the one. But behind the curtain, things weren't nearly as friendly as they looked on screen. On camera, Johnny and Ed were pure gold, two men perfectly in sync. Ed's booming laugh and big personality balanced Johnny's cool, sharp wit like a well-rehearsed dance. They looked like best friends having the time of their lives. But when the stage lights dimmed, the truth came out. They were complete opposites. Ed was a people person, loud, social, always ready for a party. Johnny, not so much. He was quiet, withdrawn, and allergic to Hollywood's social scene. No after-show drinks, no double dates, just work and then home. Crew members later revealed that the two rarely spent time together off camera. And here's the jaw-dropper. Johnny once told his own son that he couldn't stand Ed McMahon. Imagine hearing that after decades of laughing together on national television. Brutal. But somehow, they pulled it off. Night after night, they delivered chemistry so real, audiences believed they were inseparable. It's proof that in showbiz, friendship isn't always required. Sometimes, all it takes is respect, timing, and a shared commitment to great television. Imagine this. You're a young comedian, fresh off Saturday Night Live, and Johnny Carson himself is laughing at your jokes. You made it. You're in. That's where Dana Carvey was, until one bold move turned everything upside down. Carvey was flying high, charming audiences with his quick wit and razor-sharp impressions. But then he made the mistake every comic fears. He took aim at the wrong target. Not just anyone, but the king of late night himself. It started with an SNL sketch called Carcinio, a savage parody that painted Carson as an out-of-touch old-timer trying desperately to imitate Arsenio Hall's younger, cooler vibe. Funny to viewers, not so funny to Johnny. But here's the real jaw-dropper. Carvey didn't stop there. He actually did the impression to Carson's face live on The Tonight Show. Imagine mocking your host on his own stage while he's sitting 3 feet away. Bold? Absolutely. Smart? Not even close. Carson's smile vanished, and so did the invitations. When Wayne's World exploded and Carvey could have used the Tonight Show spotlight, Johnny made sure the door stayed firmly shut. By the final year of Carson's reign, the message was crystal clear. You can make America laugh all you want, but never ever mock the king in his own castle. Let's start with this. What happens when the world's greatest impressionist takes on the one man who hates being copied? Rich Little built his entire career on mimicking others. Presidents, movie stars, you name it, he could sound just like them. And at first, Johnny Carson was amused. He'd laugh, clap, and even invite Little back to The Tonight Show again and again. But behind that famous grin, something darker was brewing. You see, Carson was fiercely protective of his image. To him, that suave, composed late-night host persona wasn't just a performance, it was his identity. So when Rich started doing Johnny at nightclubs, corporate events, and award shows, Carson saw it more than flattery. He saw it as theft. By 1982, the tension boiled over. Rich's Tonight Show invitations suddenly vanished. Little later claimed Carson had him blacklisted for overusing the impression. The show's producers denied it, saying his act had just gotten stale. Classic, he said, they said. But here's where the story flips. Years later, when HBO made The Late Shift, a film about the chaos surrounding Carson's retirement, they needed someone to play Johnny himself. And guess who got the part? Rich Little. Imagine that. The man Carson allegedly banned ends up becoming him, on screen for the whole world to see. Talk about the ultimate impressionist revenge. Now that's some next-level irony. Wayne Newton, Mr. Las Vegas himself, and Johnny Carson were once thick as thieves. Newton was a Tonight Show regular, appearing nearly 30 times. Each visit boosted his fame, his charm, and his Vegas empire. But the glitz faded fast once money and real estate entered the picture. In 1980, both Carson and Newton had their eyes on the same prize, the Aladdin Hotel in Las Vegas. Newton won the bid, Carson lost. And from that moment on, something inside Johnny flipped. The jokes that used to celebrate Newton suddenly turned sour. His Tonight Show monologue started hitting below the belt, poking fun at Newton's looks, his voice, his entire act. But then Carson took it too far. He began cracking jokes that hinted Newton had ties to organized crime. That's not comedy, that's character assassination disguised as a punchline. Newton wasn't having it. One day, he stormed into Carson's office, looked him dead in the eye and said, "You stop talking about me or we'll have a real problem." That was it. Carson backed off, but the damage was permanent. The friendship, gone. The invitations stopped cold. Two once great friends, torn apart by pride, power, and a hotel deal gone bad. Turns out, sometimes the biggest gamble in Vegas isn't at the tables, it's trusting your friends. If you ever want to see Johnny Carson completely lose his cool, well, not in a shouting way, but in that silent, painfully awkward, I'd rather be anywhere else way, just watch his interview with Oliver Reed. It's a masterclass in discomfort. From the moment Reed, the wild British actor known for his drinking and unpredictable behavior, sat down, the vibe was off. You could almost see Johnny mentally checking his watch, wondering how many more minutes he had to endure. Then it got worse. Fellow guest Shelley Winters, clearly fed up with Reed's antics, suddenly dumped her whiskey over his head mid-conversation. You'd think that would break the tension. Nope, it just made it worse. Reed tried to laugh it off, cracking jokes, trying to win the room back. But Johnny? Stone-faced. Not a smirk, not a spark, just dead eyes and polite nods. Usually, Carson had this effortless charm with his guests. He'd meet their energy, toss in a quip, keep things moving. But with Reed, there was nothing. Every time Oliver tried to make a point, Johnny would shoot it down. Not playfully, but with that subtle, no one cares kind of disdain that only he could pull off. At one point, you can actually catch Carson forcing a smile, the kind that says, "I hate this, but the cameras are rolling." The tension was so thick, you could practically cut it with a cocktail stir. To this day, nobody really knows what set Johnny off. Maybe it was Reed's heavy drinking, maybe his chaotic energy, or maybe their personalities just clashed from the start. Whatever the reason, that interview remains one of The Tonight Show's most uncomfortable moments ever. And Carson didn't even try to hide it. If you want to see a comedian's career crumble in seconds, look no further than Charlie Collis. Famous among comedians for his wild facial expressions, bizarre characters, and mind-blowing sound effects that seemed impossible for a human mouth, Collis was Johnny Carson's go-to guest. He appeared nearly 50 times over 20 years. That's loyalty most performers could only dream of. Then came 1982. Collis took the stage as usual, but something was off. His jokes weren't landing. The audience sat in awkward silence. You could feel it bombing in real time. Carson, a master at salvaging flops, tried his usual trick, turning failure into comedy. He let out a whistle that sounded like a bomb dropping, a subtle, funny way of saying, "This isn't working." And then, Collis made the mistake of a lifetime. He shoved Carson. It was meant as playful banter, a buddy move, but Collis had completely misread the line between on-screen friendliness and real-life boundaries. Carson's response was instant and merciless. "You'll never be on this show again." Live, in front of millions, Collis scrambled, trying to play it off, begging Johnny to reconsider. The audience sat frozen. Silence. Carson didn't flinch. He meant every word. He hosted for another decade, and Charlie Collis never mentioned again. Decades of goodwill wiped out in one impulsive move. Collis's career survived thanks to friends like Mel Brooks, but that Tonight Show spotlight, the one that had defined him, was gone forever. One shelf, one lifetime erased. Comedy history rarely gets this dramatic. Joan Rivers, the friendship that fell apart overnight. It's one of the most heartbreaking stories in late-night history. Joan Rivers and Johnny Carson weren't just colleagues, they were friends. Carson didn't just book Joan Rivers as a guest, he made her a regular guest host, letting her sit in his iconic chair when he took nights off. Rivers often said Carson launched her career, giving her the exposure she needed to become a star. For years, everything seemed perfect. Then came 1986. Fox offered Rivers her own late-night talk show, a golden opportunity to step out of Johnny's shadow and finally have her own platform. But she made a career-defining mistake. She didn't tell Carson. When the news leaked, Carson didn't hear it from Rivers. He found out through the grapevine, and he felt betrayed. Blindsided by someone he trusted, Carson didn't just react, he hit back. Rivers was banned from The Tonight Show, and Carson made it clear that anyone appearing on her show risked losing access to his stage. Suddenly, the guest list for Joan's show shrank, her momentum stalled, and within a year, the network pulled the plug. Her dream show became Arsenio Hall's gig instead. Joan tried to apologize to rebuild the friendship, but Carson never responded. When he passed away in 2005, they were still estranged. Joan publicly expressed regret, wishing she'd handled things differently. It's a cautionary tale about pride, loyalty, and timing. One phone call, one conversation, and perhaps this friendship and her show might have survived. Instead, a single misstep turned one of television's brightest relationships into one of its saddest feuds. Bob Hope was Hollywood royalty,
A comedy titan who could light up a stage, charm troops overseas, and dominate screens like few others. Everyone respected him, everyone, that is, except Johnny Carson. On the surface, Carson admired Hope's legendary status, but behind the cameras, he couldn't stand working with him. The clash came down to one simple thing: style. Carson thrived on improvisation, on spontaneous riffs, on turning unexpected moments into comedy gold. Hope? Every laugh, every story, every punchline was meticulously scripted by his team. Andrew Nichols, Carson's head writer, summed it up best. Hope leaned on his writers for everything, while Carson lived for real conversation. On The Tonight Show, Hope could only answer the questions he'd rehearsed. Ask him something off script, and he floundered, sometimes giving answers that made no sense at all. After one particularly excruciating 1980s interview, where Hope seemed utterly lost, Carson reportedly told his staff, "If I ever end up like that, guys, I want you to shoot me." That's how much he dreaded turning into a robot version of a comedy legend. Off camera, tensions flared even more. At a gala for Ronald Reagan's inauguration, organized by Frank Sinatra, both Carson and Hope were booked to perform. Even though Johnny was one of the headliners, Hope decided he needed to help Carson. And the awkwardness that followed only confirmed how incompatible these two comedy giants really were. Bob Hope stormed into Johnny Carson's life, literally. One day he tracked him down and thrust several pages into his hands. "Here, I've written some lines you might like," Hope said with a grin. Carson smiled politely and thanked him. Inside, however, a storm was raging. As soon as Hope left, Johnny exploded to his team. "Can you believe the nerve of that man? He actually thinks I need jokes from him." The worst part? He couldn't get away from Hope. NBC adored Bob Hope. The network treated him like royalty, even granting him permanent access to Carson's own studio whenever he pleased. It was Johnny's turf, except whenever Hope decided he needed it. And if that wasn't enough, Bob could book himself on The Tonight Show anytime, all in the name of promoting his endless NBC specials. Producer Peter Lasley called it torture. He'd get a request, and Johnny would just go, I'd ask, "Do you want to tell him no?" And he'd say nothing. He couldn't. Hope had too much clout at NBC. The final straw came during one of Hope's later visits. Johnny delivered a monologue that had the audience roaring, but from backstage, Hope asked a shocking favor. Could he use the audience's laughter for his own special? He wanted to ride Carson's success to hide his own failing material. Johnny froze. Audacity was one thing, but this? Reluctantly, he agreed. That moment summed it up perfectly. The desperation, the reliance on others, the inability to succeed on his own merit. Respect for the legend? Sure. But actually wanting to work with him? Absolutely not. After all the awkward silences, bruised egos, and those sly little jabs that didn't go unnoticed, one question lingers. Who else managed to get under Johnny Carson's skin? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear. Thanks for watching. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe for more behind-the-scenes stories.